All right, hello and welcome to another build guide. This one is for what I'm lovingly calling the Whirlwand Dark Light Paladin. You'll see why I call it that in a minute. And this build is stupid fun. Like, it's stupid fun. I've had a lot of fun playing a lot of builds. Every build that I've posted on here, I enjoy playing, or else I wouldn't post it. This one might be the most fun. It's not necessarily the best, but my god, is it fun to play. So we're going to cover it here, and I'm going to let you know what's the strong points of it, what's the not so strong points, and then we'll get into how to make the build. So let's start with the positives. This build has absolutely insane AoE damage, like off the charts high. This one outperforms the Meteor build that I just released about, well, depending on when I released this video, a week ago or so. Probably more like 2 weeks. Either way, that build's got a crazy high AoE damage. This one outperforms it. So, yeah, basically you get a group of people together, a group of mobs together, and you hit the cooldowns, and everything gets erased almost immediately. At least the lower level mobs for sure, and a lot of the higher level mobs too, depending on how the composition of the mobs works, what it's at the time that you attack them. So yeah, it's really fun to watch your character just fly in there, whirlwinding like crazy, or warpathing as it's called in Last Epoch, and everything just dies. Another huge benefit of this build, which is tied to the first one, is a very quick boss killer if you plan correctly. And what I mean by planning correctly is you have to have a lot of other mobs around it, because this build is basically a cascading effect of damage. So what happens is you get yourself in a good position, you hit your Void Orb, or your Devouring Orb, excuse me, to get it up. You can hit your Volatile Reversal to increase your attack speed and movement speed, and you hit your Holy Aura. When you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to do these explosions, these flame bursts as they're called, in very quick succession. If you're built like I am, they'll do like 10 to 15,000 damage each one of them. They're going to explode on each other, and then things are going to die, and when those die, Devouring Orb is going to start exploding, and just everything's going to die from explosions. And it's, like I said, it's stupid fun. But if you get a boss in there when these explosions are going off, it's going to get pretty much annihilated from all of the explosions that are going off all over the place. So that is when you can get it to be a quick boss killer. We'll talk about in a second what happens when you don't do that. But before we do that, let's talk about some more of the positives. Great arena clear speed, like really good. You group everything together. You do the cooldowns, and you watch it die, and you just wait for the next stuff to come in. Rinse and repeat. It also has very high leech. When you hit all your cooldowns and you kill a bunch of stuff and you're doing 10 to 15k damage crits, you get a lot of leech. You get a whole lot of leech. Even if you don't have much built into your gear, you really don't need much. You'll just watch your bar get like instantly refilled every time you do it. So that's the positives. What are the negatives of this build? Because it definitely has some. First off, it's really risky. Certainly for builds that I make. You have to spend your time basically taking on packs of enemies, warpathing through them, and they're going to hit you. You can't avoid it. It's not something that you can avoid with this build at all. And you're probably going to end up in the middle of a bunch, so you're going to get hit by a lot of stuff, unlike some of these melee builds where you can kind of like plan out and make sure you're not getting hit by too many of them. This one, you can follow the edges of a group, but eventually you're just going to find yourself in the middle, and they're going to hit you hard. And you have to be quick to react with your potions, or you're going to find yourself dead. So you keep that in mind if you decide you want to play this, or you're thinking about wanting to play this. There's a much higher risk of this one than some other builds, like say the Vengeance Paladin build that I made, which is very tanky and it's still melee, but you're unlikely to die as long as you're keeping up the Vengeance damage reduction. This has no such damage reduction, and so getting stuck in the middle of a bunch of stuff could get you killed. Another thing, it's a slow boss killer when alone. This is kind of the opposite of what we talked about with its quick boss killer when planning with a bunch of stuff around. If it's by itself, it can kill some bosses relatively quickly, but high health, high defense, armor protections bosses They're not going to die from the first set of cooldowns. You'll have to wait for another set. You might have to wait for 3 sets. It can take a little bit. It's not terrible at it, but there are a lot of other builds that can outperform it because they don't have to wait for the CDs. And also, Devouring Orb does nothing if you don't have other mobs around, so you get no benefit from Devouring Orb. You're completely relying on Holy Aura. And truly, if you're running a wand with this build, which is how I'm running it currently, it can also run with a scepter. But if you're running it with a wand, you're getting basically no damage from your Warpath. Your Warpath's going to do like somewhere between 2 and 15 damage per hit. That's just effectively nothing. It also only has decent mono clear speed. It's still pretty good. This build, this class moves pretty quickly. 62% move speed you see here, and if we click on Devouring Orb, we get 78%, and then if we really want to push it up, Volatile Reversal gets to 106. Volatile Reversal in this current iteration though pushes you back 4 seconds. So if you're walking along, you're moving, you hit it, you're 4 seconds behind. So you're actually not going to be able to use that to move through monoliths. You're pretty much relying on Devouring Orb and your base movement speed. So like I said, it's not bad, but if you compare it to other Sentinel builds that can throw in Shield Rush and can throw in Lunge, they're going to move a lot quicker through a monolith than this is. Now once it gets there, it's going to annihilate everything, but you do got to get there. It's going to be faster than, say, the Meteor build, because it is going to move a lot quicker. Even though the Meteor has Teleport, I think this one will get there quicker. And it can also destroy stuff in its path or along its way without actually stopping. You go, and then all of a sudden you decide to hit your Holy Aura, and things will explode that are chasing you. So it's not bad. I don't want to give that impression that it's going to struggle in a monolith. It's not. It's just not going to be as fast as some of the other ones are. It'll probably be quite quick in the later game though, because you can't necessarily use Shield Rush and Lunge as much in the late game because you get yourself in trouble. Where this one isn't worrying about that anyway. It's just kind of warpathing its way all the way to the end. So it's not as big of a deal. All right, the last thing is the leech that I talked about, how high it is. Well, it's very dependent on the cooldowns. So I just mentioned, if you're using a wand, even if you're using a scepter, it's better for a scepter, but if you're using a wand and you're doing 1 to 15 or 2 to 15 damage, there's not much to leech from that. So you're only really going to leech when you're using your cooldowns and you're getting those 10k crits all over the place, and then your leech is sky high. So if you're positioning yourself and or your stuff is on cooldown, you are at more of a risk because you can't heal as quickly. So bear that in mind as well. That's the other side of it, or the other problem, so to speak, the risky part of this build. Not only are you going to stand in stuff and get hit, but if your cooldowns are down, you're not going to be able to leech much of anything either. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the build. Hopefully, you're still interested in seeing what this does, knowing that you might die. But you'll have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Okay. The very first thing we'll talk about, let's go from priorities here. So obviously Warpath is a big part of this. It allows us to continuously move around and hit at a very high pace, high speed. One of the reasons it allows us to do that is because it effectively costs not only no mana to run Warpath, but we gain mana running it. If that wasn't the case, this would be a serious problem. The other nice thing about the way this build is we don't have to worry about damage from Warpath at all. Like I said, it does 1 to 15 with a wand. It does something like 100 to 200 with a scepter. And really that's kind of a combination of preference, or whether or not you want that little bit of leech, or whether you want more base spell damage, more maximum damage. And I'll talk about that a little more in itemization. But for now, I'll show it. It actually doesn't matter whether or not you pick Scepter or Wand. You'll build this the same way. So we start with Unbound Storm, which is going to drain 6 less mana per second. The 30% increased damage, again, not really important. That 6 less mana per second is huge. We're going to take Reckless Spin. You take 25% more elemental damage while spinning, or Path drains 4 less mana. Bear in mind that elemental damage, you might have to think about offsetting it with other options, usually with gearing. Then we're going to take Iron Reach, 40% increased area of effect. And then we're going to take Quicksilver Wand. Not necessarily in this order, by the way. Actually, let me show you in the order I would suggest. Take the Iron Reach. Take these first. Take the Iron Reach. Take Whirling Blades, 30% increased damage. All this is doing for us is getting us to Rejuvenating Spiral, 75% increased mana regen while spinning. This allows us to actually gain mana while we're spinning, which is really important because some of the abilities we use are going to be pretty expensive, and we need to get that mana back. Then we're going to take Quicksilver Wind. This is like the fun part of it, because this will drain 3 additional mana, but you move 60% faster. Without this, you are going to move slower than base speed. Maybe you'll be able to get a little above base speed with your gear. Otherwise, you're going to go... Warpath itself will go slower than base speed. So this is really important. 60% is huge. It allows us to move around quite quickly. All right, let's move on to... Let's talk about Devouring Orb, actually. Devouring Orb is the secondary damage technically, but it really is the thing that kind of... Well, you hit everything in the battlefield when you're using this, so it's pretty valuable. You can make a build without this. You can also make a build without Holy Aura. You could, and people have, go pure Devouring Orb or pure Holy Aura, and that's going to be a good build. In fact, the Holy Aura build could be really good and possibly a little bit safer, a little bit more defensive, depending on what you switch out with Devouring Orb. But you won't have the same top-end damage, I don't think. All right, we're going to take Dark Moon. 100% increased mana cost, 50% reduced damage, and area growth on kill. Devouring Orb orbits you. That's important, that orbits you. Abyssal Rush, 20% increased movement speed. That kind of self-explanatory. With this ability, we want to go as fast as we can. Cosmic Impact, 20% increased mana cost. Devouring Orb deals void damage to enemies it hits while orbiting. That's not what's important. What's important is Sightless Star, 100% increased mana efficiency, and 35% increased cast speed. We don't want to be casting too long, because this is the only ability out of all of our options here. Out of Devouring Orb, we got Vault Reversal, Holy Aura, and Ring of Shields. This is the only one that's not instant cast. That means it's the only one that you can't cast while spinning. And not spinning is not good, especially if you're getting hit. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. One of the reasons, though, being Warpath makes you immune to stuns. You can't be stunned with it. So when you're not moving, you can get stunned, and that can turn into you dying pretty quickly. All right, next we can take Rift Caller. Void Rifts created by Devouring Orb deal 50% increased damage. Then Abyssal Expanse. Void Rifts created by your Devouring Orbs have 120% increased area of effect. Soul Eater. The rate at which the damage of the Void Rifts created by your Devouring Orb increases is increased by 30%. So what this basically is telling you, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, Devouring Orb, as it goes off, makes the next one more powerful. And so the more Devouring Orbs you can get to go off, the better. Every time an enemy dies, Devouring Orb goes off. You can really start to launch that up there really quickly as far as damage goes. And that's why the more mobs, the better. For real for this build. Like, for real, the more mobs, the better. This thrives on having as many mobs as possible in its general vicinity. All right, now let's talk about Holy Orb. This really is the star. Devouring Orb is kind of like the supporting actor, is what Devouring Orb is. This is the lead role. All right, so the most important parts to this build are this tree here. As was the case for my Vengeance build, is also the case for this build. Raya's Devotion, Holy Orb gives 8% ignite chance on hit. All that's doing is getting us into the build. We don't actually care about that. But Burning Blows, you and your allies have 50% increased fire damage, is really good. Flame Burst is the true star. After an enemy takes 8 melee hits, there is a burst of holy fire around it. While Holy Aura is active, only 4 melee hits are required. You can see why that cooldown is super important for Holy Aura. Improved Flame Burst, if you are the one to get the final hit on Holy Flame Burst, it deals 200% increased damage. You will always be the one to get the final hit because you're the only one hitting. So there you go. On a multiplayer, that might not be quite as powerful, but we're not in multiplayer right now. Then we're going to take Fanaticism. Holy Aura gives 16% increased melee attack speed. Of course, when we're actually activating Holy Aura, that's 32% increased melee attack speed, which is pretty substantial. And then we've also taken Shelter from the Storm. Holy Aura gives plus 120 elemental and poison protection. If you remember, I said with Warpath, we have that one node, Reckless Spin. We take 25% more elemental damage. So this is one way to start to offset that. Okay, now let's talk about the other two supporting, super supporting, I don't know, the extra supporting, the things that aren't doing the damage, directly at least. All right, so we've got Volatile Reversal in here. And Volatile Reversal is, the name is fitting because right now it's a little buggy. So if you don't set up the way that I did, and I'll explain exactly what I did in a second here, but if you don't set up the way that I did, you can actually drop mana using this ability instead of gain mana the way that you would normally want it to. What it's going to do is it's going to send us back 4 seconds in time into that location. It's supposed to also set you back to your health and mana, but generally it'll actually increase your mana, but sometimes it'll drop it to like 0. And there's no rhyme or reason why. It's not because you were at 0 4 seconds ago. It just seems to be bugged out. But we can actually alleviate that by just removing the mana gain from it. And so to do that, we're going to take Time Lost Wisdom. Your mana is not restored when you use Vault Reversal. It also gives you a 400% increased cooldown recovery speed, which is really quite good. I didn't take this note for that, but when I had it, I was like, oh, nice. I can actually use this ability even when my other cooldowns are on cooldown and still do quite a bit of damage because the attack speed is increased, and therefore the Holy Aura procs are going off more often. So to get there, we're going to take Traveler's Fatigue, 20% reduced health regen during Vault Reversal cooldown, 50% increased cooldown recovery speed. That's really only to get us here, and also to get us here, Ancient Reversal, which is going to cause us to travel back 2 additional seconds. So it's the base for this ability is 2 seconds. Add 2 more, 4 seconds. We get 4 total seconds of a buff. That's why we're taking that. The other real stars of the show, Time Sap, 9% cooldown recovered when you kill an enemy with any skill. That's nice, but that's going to get us to Warped Time. Gain 30% attack and cast speed when you use Vault Reversal. The duration of this buff is equal to the length of time you travel back. You'll remember that's 4 seconds. This is also true for catching up. Gain 36% movement speed when you use Vault Reversal. We've also taken Terminal Void Rift. Create a Void Rift at the location you returned to when you use Vault Reversal. 3 points in Dark Expanse. Void Rift created by Vault Reversal have 220% increased area effect. That really is just to get to Harbinger of Dust, increasing our damage by 10%. Originally, I had this all the way up, boosted to 30% damage, but having to take this and these, I had to cut something, so that went. We also have taken Incipient Void Rift, which just causes us to create a Void Rift at the place that we come from. So we create it where we come from and going to. So we're hitting more enemies, more of that 10% buff is gained. All right, and the last item is Ring of Shields. This is a relatively new addition. I've been playing this build for probably about weeks straight. I added this just today. I think it's probably the best way to go. But if you want to be more reckless, you can instead choose to add, where is it? Smite. And you can go and take Righteous Flurry. And you can cast Smite and gain 50% increased attack speed for a good little bit of time and do even more damage. But there's 2 problems with that. One is you won't have Ring of Shields, and Ring of Shields is your big defensive ability. And 2 is this is an on-cast ability as well, so you'll have to leave Warpath to do it. It is fun, though, but I do recommend for the average player take, even for hardcore, if you're trying to push rifts, or not rifts, wow. If you're trying to push arenas, even monoliths, Ring of Shields is a safer bet, even though it might take you a little bit more time. It won't even be that much more because Vault Reversal's cooldown is so low, like in 3 seconds here, and if I kill stuff, it goes down even further. There's really no need to cast Smite, so I definitely recommend Ring of Shields. But if you want to go crazy and you want to like just have super high attack speed and just obliterate everything in your path, even more so, you can go the Smite route. All right, so let's talk about Ring of Shields, what we're taking. 5 in Banding, increase 100% increased health, armor, and protections. 1 in Heavy Burden, chance to slow enemies. That's mostly to get to pulsing shields. Shields periodically push enemies away from you. This is a solid part. Banding is pretty good. But there's some other stuff in here that's probably a little bit more important. Actually, let's talk about this stuff down here first. Enduring Defense, Ring of Shields lasts 6 seconds longer. Super important. This makes sure that Ring of Shields is always up, 100% uptime, as long as you're hitting the button on cooldown. So we definitely want to have that one. Reinforcement, you create 2 additional shields. Very nice. On the path, while using Warpath, your shields spin 150% faster and take 30% less damage. 30% less damage is especially good. I'm not sure what this spinning shields is actually doing here, but it does look cool, so you got that going for you. And maybe it actually is doing something that I don't understand yet. Then we're going to take Bastion. Shields rotate around you from 40% further away. That's nice for the push and to keep stuff kind of away from you because you don't want to get too close. And then Amass, you create 3 additional shields. You're going to have like a ton of shields around you. And it looks really cool when you're spinning. Yeah, and they're going really fast, and it's also actually really beneficial. You don't die quite as much. That's always a good thing. All right, let's finish off the skill trees with the passive skill tree. Now, as usual with Sentinel, there are a lot of ways you can go with this, but we are going Paladin as our mastery. There's a lot of great nodes in Sentinel right now. It's a very balanced class. And as you can see here, I've taken points in every skill tree. So let's go through that and see exactly why I did what I did. All right, first off, we've taken Gladiator. Block chance is always really good with pretty much any Sentinel build as long as you're using a one-hander, a sword and board. And so we're taking Gladiator. We've also taken Fearless For the health regen and vitality, honestly, the health regen in this build is a good secondary benefit. So I think in this one I have something like, actually only have 45 health regen. So we've talked about when you're not using your cooldowns, your leech is pretty weak. That can be a good way to kind of stay alive, but it's not the primary. So you can actually jump out of this if you want. The vitality is really good though for the protection, but this one's not an essential by any stretch. We've also taken 2 points in armor clad just to get ourselves up to the final tier of this particular tree. Some more armor, some more armor, and some more armor. And then we've taken one of the best nodes in the base class, Retaliation. We get 25% increased damage, but if we've blocked in the last 5 seconds, we actually get 50% increased damage, and we're going to be blocking constantly with this build because we're going to be in stuff constantly. And our block chance currently is 59%. We can actually jump that up quite a bit if we wanted to, and probably would want to if we continue to push this build. We're currently level 86. If we get to 100, I'd definitely be putting some more points into block. All right, let's talk about Void Knight. Void Knight's purpose here is primarily to get both Volatile Reversal and Devouring Orb, but it has some really good nodes. So we put 7 out of 10 into Devouring Blade. This is one of my favorite nodes in the Sentinel tree as well. 70% increased damage if you have killed an enemy in the past 4 seconds. I've also put 8 out of 8 into World Eater. The primary purpose of this is void damage leached as health. We also get melee damage leached as health. If you're using a scepter, you will benefit from this more so than if you were using a wand, but the void damage is still good for abyssal echoes. However, if you are experimenting with this and find that you're getting plenty of leech from holy aura, which you very well may be, you can take some points out of this and put it in something like the rest of devouring blade. There's a couple other really good ones here. Abyssal endurance is solid. Let's see, I think Sorrow and Steel. Yeah, Sorrow and Steel is pretty solid, more void damage. Those are all options too. Now that'll get you up to Devouring Orb, but I've also taken 4 points into Void Bolts for the extra base void damage on spells. I had this at +8 before I switched over and started using Ring of Shields, but I'd take a few out to get my Forged card to 5, so that we could get the Ring of Shields, which we'll now talk about. But if you want to put more points into Void Bolts, it's certainly good. I'm not sure exactly how well it multiplies with Holy Aura. It is actually adding damage to Holy Aura. It's adding +8 Void base to Holy Aura. But since Holy Aura is a fire spell, it's probably not very multiplicative with the ability. But still, there's more damage there, and obviously for Devouring Orb, it's doing some work. All right, Forge Guard, 5 of 8 in Steel Aegis. If you find the points to put this to 8 of 8, that's awesome. You should definitely do that. But the primary purpose here is to get Ring of Shields, which we have done. Now the Paladin, which is obviously our primary and the one that has the most points. Okay, 5 of 5 in Honor. Block Chance, Block Armor, Stun Avoidance, pretty self-explanatory. Defiance, Attunement, and Elemental Protection. We need the protections on Elemental. I think I boosted mine pretty good here. Yeah, 48, 43, 45. I've actually got decent protections across the board right now. You see I have +18 into Vitality, which is actually, for this, I could benefit from some more Attunement, but we're getting some here, along with the multiplier, 15% increased protection. And then we've jumped all the way up to Flash of Brilliance, +100 health, which is very nice, and +30% chance to blind enemies on hit. Ain't so bad either. We're taking 3 of 7 of Holy Symbol for the healing effectiveness, but really this is the Elemental and Necrotic Protection base that we've taken it for, and just to jump up to the next tier, which we're really trying to jump all the way up to this tier. So we took 2 more in Inner Flame, plus Attunement, plus Fire Protection. Could definitely switch to this if we wanted to, but the Attunement's nice. There's a lot of ability to go back and forth in these. Also, I have not experimented with Divine Bolt on this build. I don't know what its base damage is anymore. It has gone through some changes over time. If the damage is good, you will be hitting things an awful lot. You might want to switch into that. You can get the additional projectiles, but you lose reduction to chance to hit. But if this is doing good damage, it could be an option as well. I just haven't really played with it since it's gotten overhauled a bit. It used to actually not work at all. Okay, Faith Armor, +40 health, 40% increased armor, and 40% critical strike avoidance. I love this node. It's a new or fairly new node. I think it's actually this last patch. That critical strike avoidance I think is really cool. Getting 40% increased armor and +40 health is almost icing on the cake. I would think about taking this just with the crit strike avoidance. So having the other ones on there made this one a pretty easy node to take. And 2 into Staunch Defender. This is one I'd like to put more points into, and I'd also probably put points into Shield Wall. Should I have more to do so? Because I think dodging this is very low. Actually 22%, so I'd have to probably move some things around to make that happen. And I think I actually started pushing dodge a little bit because Ward Trail is another option for your gearing. We can talk about that later. But for now, you can go Shield Wall if you want to. Just make sure you're not putting points into to dodge if you're going to do so. But this currently in this build's iteration, it's not using that. Okay, my favorite node maybe in the entire game. Holy Precision, of course, has 10 of 10, 300% increased critical strike chance. So that's a lot. If you have 20% base, you're going to gain another 60% on top of that, and you'd be at 80% crit, or something like that, actually. Let's see here. What do we have for our spell crit? 22%. So there you go. 22% is actually being affected by this as well. But we're actually higher than that on the Holy Aura, I believe. Either way, we see that we crit an awful lot anyway, as it is. Okay, and then we jump all the way up to Light of Rhea, which gives us, well, I have 10 of 12 right now. It'll give us more than this if you max it out. But 80% increased fire damage and 10% increase in movement speed. I love the movement speed on this, but of course the fire damage is also really good. Both these stats are excellent for what we're doing. We want to go faster and we want to do more damage, so it's a pretty easy choice to take that node as well. All right, let's go to gearing and itemization. This guide is going a little long here. My guides seem to be getting longer as I go, so I'm going to try to get through this relatively quickly. It shouldn't take too long. But there are some interesting choices here because what we're doing is we're using our Devouring Orb and we're using Holy Aura, so that's both void damage and fire damage. So when we do our gearing on the offensive side, we have to be careful what we take. So I do have 254% increased fire damage because fire is the primary damage. But really what we want more than anything is to try to get spell damage. And so I have 250% of that as well. Also, critical strike multiplier is really good. And if you get base spell damage, which you're going to get a lot of that from your wand, you see I have 312%, or your scepter, depending what you use. Remember, scepters have less base spell damage, but they'll have melee damage. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. But you definitely want your base spell damage to be really high. You want to increase your spell damage and fire damage over void damage. But of course, void damage is nice to have. It's not a bad thing to have it. Also, do not overlook melee attack speed, as the way Holy Aura works, you have to hit the enemy a certain number of times before the fire explosion occurs, before it procs. So the faster you're attacking, the more quickly you'll get to the proc. So you definitely want some melee attack speed. I would almost could almost use a little bit more on this build and be perfectly happy with that. That should cover the offensive stuff. There's not a whole lot to it. So let's go to the defensive side. As always, Glancing Blow. Bear in mind that with this next update, there are rumors that we're going to be getting rid of Glancing Blow, or that Glancing Blow is going to be going away, and that will probably hit not long after this build guide, but that is certainly not confirmed, so just keep that in mind. If you're playing this and the next patch has come out, look to see if Glancing Blow still exists. If it does, 100% Glancing Blow is still, in my opinion, mandatory. So try and get to that as quickly as you can. Block chance, as we talked about in the passive tree, is really good. Block protection, which goes along with that, is really good. Health regen is a nice little extra benefit, but not necessarily required if you've got really good leech and you're careful when you're not spinning and getting your cooldowns. Movement speed is really good. As you see, I've got a lot of movement speed on my boots. I would go for more if I could. If I can find more, if I can find a better base, I'll be picking that up. That's not really defensive, but it kind of is as well. So yeah, pick that up if you got some. So you definitely have the suffix for your boots. One of them to be movement speed. Health is really good. You want to be able to survive as long as possible. And to do that, you need to not get one shot. I've got a little bit over 800, or something around 850, I think, health, 841. I'd actually like to be over 1,000. That would be something that I'm going to work towards eventually. And your armor and protections, finally, are useful in this build for sure, especially your elemental stuff, because remember, you have a 25% elemental damage taken from reckless spin in your warpath. So you want to try to offset that as much as you possibly can. So do not neglect your armor protections. Also bear in mind, if you even if you got high block, if you got high dodge, and also I should say dodge is not a bad thing to have. Just again, bear in mind if you're going to take the shield wall, you don't want dodge. But if you aren't going to take that, dodge would be perfectly fine to take. And if you want to do something really interesting, you can put if you have ward trail, you can put ward trail on, which gives you 20 ward on dodge. And if you get your dodge very high, you've also got movement speed on these. You can have a lot of fun with that, and you can build up some pretty crazy ward if you've got a high dodge rating. So that's another way you can go with defense. Defenses are still pretty, they're pretty dynamic in what you can do. You can have a lot of ways you can go. Just make sure you go away that allows you to not get one shot, and that you really focus it once you decide where you're going to go. If you're going to go high block, go high block. If you're going to go high dodge, go high dodge. I'm kind of a little bit in transition here, but you'll get a lot more out of it if you go one way or the other. But regardless, do not neglect your armor and protections, because dots will kill you if you don't have high enough armor protections, since everything in the additional defenses will not be affected by dots, or I should say dots will not be affected by it. All right, last section, and we'll make this one a quick one. We kind of covered this as we've gone anyway, and that's just how to do the rotations. It's not really complex, but it is important that you do them properly. The first thing you want to do is make sure you have Ring of Shields up all the time. So you want to hit that on cooldown. It is a big damage reduction to have it up, so if it falls off, you can find yourself dying very quickly. Next, you want to get things in a lump. We want to put things together. All the enemies in a large area is the best strategy to go for. You don't have to do it that way, but if you want to maximize your potential out of this, you really want to get everything lumped up, so that everything can kind of kill each other. To do that, you're going to use warpath. Make sure you're warpathing to wherever you're trying to go, because you cannot be stunned while you're warpathing. If you start running to places, you might get stunned and you might find yourself dead real quick. Not to mention, you will get a little bit of leech at least out of it, even if you're using a wand, and you'll get a decent amount of leech if you're using a scepter. All right, once you've got everything in a area that you want it to be in, you're going to step back a little bit. You're going to hit Devouring Orb. Make sure to step back, because you have to come out of Warpath to hit Devouring Orb, which, as we just mentioned, makes you vulnerable. Once you've done that, you can hit your Volatile Reversal and your Holy Aura immediately, and just start running around the sides of the mobs. You can run through them if you want to as well. It's just a little bit riskier, but you can run around the sides of the mobs, and they will start to explode. And it will be glorious, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. One quick note on Volatile Reversal: it is instant cast, so you can spin, you can do your Warpath and hit it, but it will take you out of Warpath for a split second. If you saw it right there, a very split second, it will turn Warpath off and then turn it back on, which will cause you to spend a little bit of mana when you do that. So if you want to be like maximum mana efficient, you can wait till you hit Warpath, so you could instead do Devouring Orb and then do Volatile Reversal and then Warpath, but you'll actually probably spend a good bit more time not Warpathing if you do that. I would suggest just going ahead and hitting Devouring Orb, then spinning to make sure you're already spinning, then Volatile Reversal and Holy Aura. It's a little safer, and the mana efficiency is pretty minimal, but if you really want to try to maximize your mana, that is one way you can do that. All right, one quick note before we wrap up the build guide. If you're going to go ahead and try this build, when you're leveling, know that it's not going to work immediately. You're going to have to work your way into it. You can't do this build without at least Devouring Orb. But Holy Aura is actually going to be what you get first, because you get Holy Aura from the Mastery. So that means you have to get through the first 2 chapters. I think you have to get to the end of time and do the Mastery quest before you can even start thinking about it. And then you've got to work your way into at least get the Flame Burst. So don't go, Whirlwanding immediately. You're going to find that you do no damage, and you don't kill anything. So you can still Warpath if you want to, but you're going to want to use a more traditional weapon until you get to Flame Burst. All right, that's going to do it for this build guide. I hope you guys like this build. I hope you have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I really enjoy making these build guides, and I really hope that they make your play much more enjoyable. If you want to check out how I make these builds, If you want to be a part of the testing process, I have a pretty active community. We stream on Twitch, and I usually try to do about 5 days a week. And most of the time has been playing Last Epoch, even though that's not the only game I play. So come check us out. Come get involved if you want to. Feel free to ask questions about builds I've made, builds you're trying to make, mechanics of the game, whatever it is. Just want to hang out. That's all cool. Love to have you there. I also have a Discord. Feel free to come check that out. I announce when I'm going to be streaming. I announce new videos. I do all of my announcements. I also just hang out and chat with you guys on there. Feel free to come join that too. All right. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. And I will see you soon.